Shalom. Hello. Today I'd like to make a hopefully short video exploring the biblical commentary of Abraham ibn Ezra. I think that his commentary would make it into the top 5 of just about all people who study the Torah, with the big commentators, Rashi, Ramban, Ibn Ezra, and a few others. But his commentaries are not always very clear. It's not always clear what he's getting at, what he wants to say. He does have a sort of an esoteric aspect to what he's speaking about when he talks about secrets, adult. But I think he also has a sort of enigmatic and even teasing writing style, as if he's sort of like challenging the reader, or let's see if you can figure out what I'm trying to say. Now, his commentary engendered a huge body of what are called super commentaries, commentaries on commentaries, commentaries that try to explain to you what the commentator was trying to say to explain the verse. But these are an extraordinarily rich source of Jewish philosophy, exegesis, thought of all sorts, but they're not always all that helpful in getting at what Ibn Ezra is saying, because the super commentaries are, for the most part, the extant ones, were really written in the 14th century. Let's just say none of them are written by people who are his contemporaries and who could have come out of more or less the same cultural backdrop as Ibn Ezra did. So they're mostly trying to make, fit whatever cryptic, enigmatic phrases Ibn Ezra has dropped in his commentary into their understanding of philosophy, arithmetic, astrology, and so on. Now, I would like to explore today with this week's Parsha, Chukat, and the first topic that's taken up there, which is the Para Aduma, the Red Heifer, certainly the paragon of unfathomable commandments, taken by many as the model par excellence of a chukah, a commandment that has no rationale. Now, this is a problem for those who feel, as I think Ibn Ezra did, that all commandments have a rationale. In other words, Ibn Ezra does not accept Sa'adia's classification of some commandments as mitzvot shimiyot, commandments that have no reason other than to have us perform them and thereby demonstrate our obeisance to God. This is a category that Sa'adia initiated, I think, in Jewish biblical exegesis. And despite the fact that Sa'adia was a major influence on Ibn Ezra, in fact, Ibn Ezra seems to have been familiar with some of his writings in Arabic that are not extant anymore, he does not accept this classification of Sa'adia. Now, in fact, Ibn Ezra wrote his own book on Ta'amei HaMitzvot, on the rationales underlying the commandments, the Yesod Morah. Again, I think this is possibly the first book of its genre, certainly one of the earliest, and a sort of underappreciated work of Ibn Ezra because, for a number of reasons, I think partly because it doesn't really fit into his stereotype as a Neoplatonist astrologer and so on. But here, he has a chapter on commandments whose rationale is not disclosed by the Torah. It's not to say that it has no rationale. As I said, he doesn't accept this classification, but he does have a chapter on commandments whose rationale is not disclosed by the Torah, and occasionally he takes a stab in that chapter at finding the rationale for some of these commandments, but not with regard to the Para Aduma, the Red Heifer. He just repeats there a certain thing that he learned from Sa'adia, relating not to the rationale of the commandment as a whole, but to one specific feature of it, without comment. in the commentary in the Perush Torah, in his commentary on the Torah, he has the exact same citation from Saadia, from a Saadian source that, as far as I know, has not yet been discovered. And he adds that it's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary comment. He's simply saying that one of the intriguing features of the Para Aduma is that the priest who carries out the sacrifice and burning the heifer to ashes himself becomes impure, even though the liquid that is prepared with these ashes is a sine qua non for full ritual purity. The reason why all Jews today are technically ritually impure is that we don't have this liquid anymore, and so we can't do the full purification ritual to clear us of having come even in indirect or very, very indirect contact with a corpse. So he does mention this fact, this opinion of Saadia, because add here that Saadia, although he has, as I said, this category of commandments who have no rationale, who are there simply to have us something to do, to perform, to act out in actions our obedience to God. We do what God commands us, even though we don't have no ideas in why we're doing this other than that. But even though the commandment as a whole has no rationale, certain details, certain features of it may have a rationale. And we'll get to that in a minute. So there is one feature, one detail of the purification ritual, which Ibn Ezra in his biblical commentary says has a sod, a secret or a hidden meaning. And that is the detail that when the person who comes to be purified comes to the temple, this liquid, which has the ashes in water, it is sprinkled on him on the third day and the seventh day of the purification period. And with regard to the choice of these specific days, he says, "B'yadua ki b'sod ha'cheshbon hashlishi k'mo shvi'i." It's well known that in the secret, or maybe sod means yesod, in the fundamental nature of numbers, the 3 is like the 7. What does this mean? 3 is not equal to 7. They share properties like being prime numbers, but there are plenty of other prime numbers. There's one right in between them, 5. People have tried to figure out what he has in mind. Some said that the square of 3 is 9, and the square of 7 is 49. And since in a lot of these arithmological manipulations in Jewish thought, we ignore take only the final decimal, the ones place, and they're both 9, but that makes no sense. So here, though, I think it's clear what he's getting at, and it's something that I found in some, though not all, of his super commentaries. He's making basically an analogy between the purification ritual and the sort of natural course of the body's healing from disease. In medieval medicine, Galenic medicine, and even, as I'll mention, even in biblical accounts of medical problems, the illness or the wound has a crisis point. That's the word in Greek, crisis. Crisis in Greek means judgment. It means that this is the point at which the illness will progress in one of two ways. Either it will start, we go on the downside of the parabola, as they say, and the illness will be dissipate and the person will be cured, or it'll go the wrong way and the person is lost. Now, this is basically, I think, a natural thing. A lot of people find that on the third day of an illness, that's where they seems to come to a climax one way or the other. And it's mentioned even in the Torah. If you recall the story of Shechem, when Jacob's there was a sort of deal struck by Jacob's children that the people of Shechem would circumcise themselves, and then they would not object to the leader of Shechem marrying their sister Dinah, who he'd already raped. But on the third day, it says the Torah, "Vayom Shlishi b'yotam ko'evim." The third day, when the pain of the mature males of Shechem reached its peak from having circumcised themselves, that's when Shimon the Levi came and massacred them. So it was the third day. And in Greek medicine as well, Galen too has a whole theory of critical days, and it's, for one reason or the other, it turns out to be the third and the seventh day that are critical. Now, what he has in mind is that they are both the reason that they come into play, and here's where the astrology comes in, and it's a very different type of astrology that you may be familiar with. So most people, those who don't accept astrology or don't run to the newspaper or the internet to see what their sign has in store for them on a certain day, will think that astrology is a nonsense. Only stupid people would believe it, and that it's all has to do with these 12 signs, Sagittarius, Aquarius, and whatnot. Both suppositions are wrong. I'm speaking as a professional historian of science who has put many hours of work and written quite a number of things on the history of astrology in Ezra's day. Now, what he has in mind here in connecting the third and seventh days of the progress of an illness with the third and seventh days of the sprinkling of the water. Why is the third and seventh? What's the astrological rationale for the crisis points being days 3 and 7? Well, the crisis, the rationale is simply the sympathy, again using it in a technical term, this strong essential bond between the moon and liquids, water and other liquids. And number two, the medical supposition that illnesses are very often, maybe for the most part, due to an excess, to a superfluity of fluids, and that the course of the illness will sort of follow along with the moon, which has 4 quadrants, each approximately 7 days. 28 days is a rough approximation of a lunar month. So each quadrant is 7 days, and the first quadrant has it waxing, going from nothing to a half moon. The second quadrant has it reinforcing, going from a half moon to a full moon. Then the third quadrant has it going from a full moon, starting to decrease down to another quarter moon, and then finally, or half moon, and then finally disappearing in the fourth quadrant. So the 7 days are the quadrant, and the third day is more or less in the middle of the 7 days. So as the astrological medicine would connect the progress of the disease with the lunar quadrant, and trying to see how the onset of the disease matches the lunar phases at that particular time, and thereby seeing if the moon will be working to make the illness stronger by waxing and making the fluid more abundant and causing more harm to the body, or in the other direction. We have here an analogy that in these critical days, that's when the person who's coming to be purified really needs to have this holy liquid sprinkled on him. So, though he never says it, he is making some analogy here between ritual purification and natural therapy, but that's as far as he goes. So again, he has no secret meaning to suggest, no hidden esoteric rationale for the Red Heifer. I mean, for all the details, why a Red Heifer and why someone never had a yoke on it and so on. He does have a rationale for the days in which the fluid is sprinkled on the person coming to be purified. This rationale is connected to basic theories in medical astrology of his time, which have nothing at all to do with the type of astrology that you read about in your newspaper. So I hope you found this interesting, and thank you for listening.